Hey, good to have you again join us today, and it's wonderful that you're able to be with us to continue this learning series on how we got our Bible, especially our translations. And I hope it has been of great benefit to you. I hope you've also shared to other people and taken notes in the things that we're learning. So the last time we talked about the internal and external evidences that we need to put together to help us have our Bibles and the work that has been done. I keep reminding you to read the preface, to read the introduction of your Bible. It gives you a lot of information that you would need in understanding the way your Bible has been put together. So we're going to move into the question of language and how the languages come to play when we come to our Bible. And so there are two choices: the verbal and grammatical choices that bring out the signs of translation. So now the difficulty has to do with the transferring of words, the transferring of ideas from one language to the other. So when you take the transcripts that were found, manuscripts that were found, and you want to transfer it to another language, it becomes something that is a bit tricky. So you need to know certain things. So I'm going to tell you a few things today and the next lesson that have to do with the signs, as it were, of bringing it from one language to another. So first thing you need to know is that there is an original language, and the language that one is translating from is usually called the original language. And in the case of the Bible, there are three languages that were translated from. That's Hebrew, Greek, and a bit of Aramaic. A few parts of Daniel and they have Aramaic, but the majority of the Old Testament was written in Hebrew. The majority of the New Testament, all of the New Testament, was written in Greek. So those three languages come to play, and so it's important. But usually, most times, even the Aramaic, in some translations, they've translated them to Hebrew. But those are the three basic languages. So usually you hear that Hebrew and Greek are being used. So you need to understand the original language. Then the second thing is the receptor language. The receptor language is the language that the Bible is being translated into. If you have an English Bible, English is the receptor language. Now, if you have a Bible in another language, some of us have Bibles in our languages. In our Nigerian setting, we have Bibles in different languages. Bibles even in Pidgin English. If you have Bible in Hebrew, not in Hebrew. If you have a Bible in Spanish, if you have Bible in Italian, if you have Bible in any other language, you would find out that becomes the receptor language. So now there's first of all the original language, then there's the receptor language. Now there's something that happens between the original language and the receptor language, and that's the other issue of the historical distance. The historical distance is the difference that exists between the original language and the receptor language. So a lot of things that were said in the original language, when it comes to the receptor language, it becomes a little bit difficult to translate, because sometimes it's hard to translate certain words from one language to another language. So the receptor language is one that the original language translated into, but then there's the distance between those two languages. Now, so both of it matters, because the idioms and the grammar and the culture, the history have to be considered when you're coming to a receptor language. So certain words could be acceptable in one language, but when you bring it to another language, because of how the language and the culture of those people have been built, you can't use certain words. You have to use euphemism, if you know that word. As you use a word that is less, that can speak of the same thing, but another word that is being used. Now, so when that happens, we now have to try and bridge the gap. So you have to bridge the gap between the original language, the receptor language. You have to try and bridge the gap in understanding the historical difference that is between both of them. Now, when that happens, we now come up with what we can call certain translations. So the first kind of translation that the original language, receptor language, and the distance between both of them has been dealt with is one that is called the formal equivalent. Now, by formal equivalent, I mean that the translators accept to keep as close to the form of the Hebrew and the Greek, both words and grammar, as can be conveniently put into understandable English. What that simply means is that they try to make sure that they maintain the words that are used as much as possible. So a word, as it will translate into the receptor language, is used. So now the gap is not really closed there, but all they are trying to do is to maintain the formal things that Bible use, the original language uses. So when you have a Bible as a formal equivalent, you find out that some of those Bibles are like the New American Standard Bible. You have the New King James Bible. They try to maintain a formal equivalent, and those ones are very the prominent ones. You find out that they try to stay as literal. That's one other word that is used to describe it, as literal as they can. Now, but the problem here is, however, is that understandable English is not the goal of the translation. All right, rather the goal is good contemporary English. So understandable English is not what these people are pursuing. It's more of the just getting to keep the form. But when you are translating, you should be able to get to contemporary English for better understanding, because if people don't have a good understanding of what they are reading, it becomes difficult. So a formal equivalent will try to maintain words, try to maintain idioms, but contemporary English, because of the historical distance not being bridged, as it were, they tend to stay more with the original language. So it doesn't help with the flow of understanding in contemporary English. So now what happens is that when you read those kind of Bibles, yes, you are close to the original, but understanding now becomes a little difficult. Now, so when you read King James, New American Standard, it gives you the sense, and that's why a lot of people like it. You hear people say that the King James is, there are words that have been diluted in other translations. No, the words are not diluted. Is the historical distance they are trying to bridge that gap, so that we get the meaning of what he says in contemporary understanding. Not that we have it in a word that sometimes some of us don't even understand. If you read some of the older versions of the King James, some of the words are even difficult to understand. So it's something that you need to know. So if you read the King James, you need a New American Standard Version. Those are new because they've done some uploads. You would see that they try to maintain a formal equivalent thought in their translation. And that doesn't mean that the Bible doesn't give you the meaning, it gives you the same meaning, but it's more or less that it's the thought is more or less tied in the old way of English that was used, and they try to maintain it how it was translated in the word, so that the word is maintained and not the what it speaks to in sense to the present day time. All right, we'll take a break on this one today, and then the next time we'll come, we'll look at the functional equivalent. So we've looked at, first of all, the original language, the receptor language, the historical distance, and then when you put those three things together, then you begin to have the kind of translations, as it were, that we have. And the first one I've told you about is the formal equivalent, or what we will call the literal translation. Literal in the sense that it just speaks to what it says, and then it goes on from there. So I hope you have done the reading that I suggested you to do. I keep reminding you to do it because many of us have Bibles that we've not read. Read the introduction, read the preface, and it will help you. Another thing I'll tell you is that your Bible has an index. So if you use a hard copy Bible in church, the Bible has an index, and in the index all the books of the Bible are listed there, and the pages of the Bible. So the next time you are told to open a book of the Bible, you don't need to go flipping pages. Just go to the beginning, check the index, check the book that you are told to go to, and get the page number, and go to the page number, and then you can get your Bible. Until I come your way next time, like, please, share, invite someone, and I hope this is a blessing to you. I'd like to get your feedbacks if you want, if you can, and God bless you. Thank you for joining. Join me again next time in the Gospel Foundation series as we look at our Bible translations. Thank you, and God bless you.